Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop. This is a card or a cabinet scraper. Very simple tool. Takes a bit of know-how in order to prepare it, but once you do, it's amazing what you can do with it. Stay with me, I will show you. I'm Rob Cosman and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, which will alert you whenever we release a new video. Anytime we use a new tool or technique, we'll leave a description down below so that make it easier for you to find. All right, let's get back to work. Most people would think of a cabinet scraper as the way that you deal with any kind of figured wood. It's actually one of the last tools that I use. I much prefer to use my hand plane. And I would say that in 95% of applications, particularly with North American domestic hardwoods, you can get your best surface with a sharp hand plane, with the throat closed down tight, and with very minimal projection. Now, we did a video on that, and I recommend that you watch it because you'll be surprised what a plane or how a well-tuned plane can actually handle difficult situations like that. We'll leave a link below so that you can check that out. Cabinet scraper is something you're going to come in and use when you can't get it with the plane. The disadvantage is it does not have a sole to control the cut. So you don't want to have to do too much because you're going to erode your nice flat surface. However, and as it's called a scraper, it really doesn't scrape, it actually does cut. But there's a fair bit of work involved in actually preparing it. And that's the part of the process that we've got to go through and demonstrate so that you'll be able to turn around and do the same thing. Very inexpensive, but when done properly is actually very effective. Let's start off with what it is. It's spring steel, or the same steel that they make saw plates out of. It's typically somewhere in the 50-52 range for the Rockwell hardness. It comes in varying thicknesses and shapes and sizes. In fact, you can modify it. Over the years, I've modified lots of it. Lots of them, I've used that to shape the inside radius of something. I did this one to shape, I think I was actually working on spindles on the back of a chair. So I did that to go in order to clean it up from the spoke shave. I've actually used the back of a chisel to scrape, and that can be very effective as well. What we're going to work with is what most people would refer to as a cabinet scraper. This measures 6 inches by 2.5, and I believe this is 15 thou in thickness. Typically, you're going to get anywhere from 15. This one actually is 25 thou, so 15, 20, 25 thou, that range. You want it to be somewhat flexible. Sometimes you want it a little stiffer than others, which would be the difference between the 15 thou and the 25 thou. But what we're going to do is actually go in and prepare that edge. Now that's something I need to explain to you so that you understand what it is we're trying to do. Got to know the end goal before you can go about doing it. What we are going to do is we are going to use this edge to remove material. So like preparing a chisel or a plane, we need to work with both surfaces that create that edge in order to get an effective cutting surface. Now, what most people would think of when they think of a scraper, you start off with something that is square edge like this, and sometimes I stop right there. I polish this surface and I polish this surface as well as this one, and I use that sharpened corner. That's when I'm just using it to prepare the surfaces between spraying on coats of lacquer. I find it very effective, extremely fast. If you want to be a little more aggressive, then we're actually going to create a surface that looks more like this, and there'll be a tiny hook as a result of us shaping the steel, and that tiny hook will actually do the cutting. Now it's actually going to have a little bit of a curl on it. What you want to be careful of is not to have it come all the way around like that, because you know, I would do it something like this. That's actually a poor example. I'm going to do it a little different. Come right around like this. And that's if you get too aggressive, and now it's very difficult. You can't get to the point, so all you're doing is rubbing on that surface, and that won't do you any good. So don't want to apply too much pressure, but you need to apply enough. However, as I mentioned, we have to go in and we need to polish the end. We need to have this nice and square. We're going to actually start with a file, and we also want to come in and we want to polish this surface. Now, while a lot of people polish a whole lot of it, I'm just going to do a very small strip. In fact, I'm going to introduce some tools that you may not have seen before when it comes to preparing scrapers. Now we're going to use our sharpening stones in the preparation of this, but to speed up the process, I want to make sure that that edge is nice and straight. Straight being the shortest distance between 2 points. So if I were to put that against a straight edge, that should be perfectly straight, no gaps. So not knowing whether or not it is, I'm going to put it in the vise. I'm going to use a fine file. I'm just going to have a block of wood with a square edge on it, and I'm going to use that. Get that glue off of there. I'm going to use this to hold that file square. I'll bring it up a little higher. And you can see when it starts to look nice and clean. Again, this is just to save time. This is going to cut obviously a whole lot faster than the stones would. So it's a great way of jointing or straightening. So that appears to be a nice fresh edge from one end to the other. Now we're going to go over here on our stones, and I'm going to start off with 500 grit. I'm using Sharpen glass stones. You want them to be nice and flat. This is my lapping plate. So I'll go in, I'll just spend a few seconds lapping that. Now, when we do this, we want this to be held square. So I've got a piece of material. This is actually torrefied maple, and it's pretty much impervious to water, so it'll hold its shape. And I'm going to set this down, and because it's wood, it's not going to wear my stone out. I'm going to set it down like that, and this is going to hold it square to the stone. And my purpose in doing this is I need to get rid of all of those coarse marks that came off of the file. I'm going to keep this well lubricated, and to wear out my, or to even the wear on my stone. Now I'm pushing down with my palm to keep downward pressure on it. My fingers and my thumb are squeezing like this to keep it tight to the side of piece of wood so it'll stay square. And as I'm moving forward and back, you'll notice that I'm rotating the scraper. If I stayed in one spot and ran like this, I'm going to wear that area quicker than the rest. So this way I get to use the entire stone. And if it starts to get sticky, just throw some more lubricant on there. You can actually use a little bit of dish soap in your water, and that'll help move easier. Light to moderate pressure. Okay, that's better. So now, like sanding or grinding, we're going to go through various grits. So that's 500. I'm going to look for our, I'm going to go to a 4,000. It's a relatively small area, so you don't have to worry about too many steps in terms of going from one grit to the next. Okay, that looks a lot better. Now, when I say a lot better, after you do this a while, you'll be able to see the progression from one grit to the next. Sometimes it's just a matter of it changes the color of gray that it is, but this is starting to look more polished. So I'm going to go right up to the 16,000. I don't think I need to spend any time on anything in between, simply because it's a small surface area and it just doesn't take very long. Okay, I don't know if you can pick it up on the camera, but that's got a nice polish and that's got a relatively sharp edge. But we still need to polish this side. Now what we're going to do is a little technique that employs the Charlesworth ruler trick, but what it will save us a whole lot of time. I'm only going to do one side for the sake of the video, but typically you would do all this edge, this edge. You could even do this one, and then do all 4 surfaces, or in this case 8 surfaces, and then you can utilize all of this. But for right now, we're just going to do the one. Okay, so what I've got here, piece of torrefied maple, 3 powerful magnets in it. And what I'm going to do, instead of going in and trying to flatten all of this, and with a blade that thin, you'll just have shiny spots underneath where your fingertips are. I'm going to use this, put it on the back, flush on the back. And what that will do, in conjunction with the Charlesworth ruler trick, is put downward pressure, cause this to flex just a little bit, so we end up with a polished strip right out there on the edge. Save us from having to do all of this, and it'll work effectively. So using my 500 grit, because I don't know what condition that unused surface is in, flatten that off, put my steel rule on there. So I'm going to set it so that we're going to work within about 1/3 of an inch of this edge. So by pushing down on this side, the left side of the block, it's going to cause that blade to flex and lay somewhat flat, at least for the first 1/8 of an inch or so. Okay, if you look at that carefully, that's pretty much done. I'm going to give it just a little bit more. Just to make me feel good. Okay, so as long as we have a clean, polished surface that runs end to end, we're good. Now I'm going to move this out and put in the 4000 grit. Key to making these work is keeping those stones flat. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, I think we can jump right over to the 16. It's a small enough surface. Okay, and if you look closely on this, we've got a nice polished strip right out on the edge. So that polished strip is going to meet this polished strip. And now we can create a nice burr. If this was left rough and you create a burr, the burr is going to be full of nicks. You're not going to get a very good surface. If you run your fingernail right along there, it should be nice and smooth. At this point, I would leave it just like this if I was using it to take down a finish between coats. All I have is just a nice sharp but square edge. Not terribly aggressive, just works great. But if I want to use it on wood, then I need to have that burr. So what we're going to do, and I should mention, there's lots of different burnishers, but then I realized not that long ago, all you need for a burnisher is something that's harder than the steel that's in the scraper. And this is like a saw, so you can file it, as you noticed when we were able to join it when we first started. So it's going to be somewhere around 50-52. Well, my chisel is 60-62, so that I've already prepared to polish the back of the chisel, and you want all the parts involved in creating the edge need to be polished to the same level, or else if you use a coarse, scratched up burnisher, that's just going to turn around and leave a mess on that nice polished corner that we just produced. So the back of a chisel that's already been prepped. So what I'm going to do, actually put some tape on the end of this just to make it a little safer to use. Now I'm going to put it in my vise, and what we want to do first is we want to just start to mushroom that a bit. So I'm going to push down on this scraper edge so that the burnisher is actually square to it, and I'll do a few strokes like that until I can just start to get that edge to roll a little bit. And this is where it would be advantageous to have already done the other side, because you'd be doing two at once. I'm going to get a little bit of camellia oil just to lubricate it so it's not squeaking. That's all it takes. And we'll put this in the vise, but I'm going to put it so that when the chisel is resting on the handle, it's pretty much parallel to the top, the handle that is. Now I'll just eyeball that to make sure it's sitting in there right. Okay, now I don't have to worry about tipping it. And what I can do is just come in with the handle resting on the bench top, make a few passes, and then just feel for a bit of a burr to start to develop. Not pressing down excessively hard, but firm. Now I'm going to bring that up a little bit. Now I'm going to do the same thing, only now I'm going to cause that burr to roll around. And just feeling for when it's sharp enough. And of course, if I was doing the other side, I would flip it around and do that the same way. Okay, now I'm going to get a piece of wood and we'll try that out. Now here's a piece of mahogany. I just planed the surface, but right here the grain changes direction, and I've got some torn bits, so I'm going to go in and fix it with this. Now this gets hot, so you may want to actually wear gloves, and this one's a little bit on the flexible side, so I probably would have chosen a thicker one to do a job like this. And you just got to find the angle where it starts to pick up a shaving. And you don't want to make it too concave, because then it's going to dig in. So I want to go in and just clean up that little bit of torn area, but I want to try to keep it flat as well. Now that's also to your advantage. If you've got a little area where you've got to go in and you don't want to have to work the entire surface around it like you would with a plane, you can go in and you can make that conform just to that area and pick up your shaving and finish it off. And when it gets dull, repeat the process to put a new edge on. But that's one of the advantages of having at least the two long sides done. You've got 4 sides to work with. As I mentioned, it gets hot, hard on your thumbs, but great tool. Need to learn how to use it. follow this process, you shouldn't have a problem. If you like my work, if you like my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos to help take your woodworking to the next level. And I've always said, better tools make it a whole lot easier. If you click on the icon with the plane and the chisel, it'll take you to our website, introduce you to all of our tools, and also talk to you about our online and in-person workshops. Good luck in your woodwork.